Thank you for attending this grant management seminar. I encourage every club to consider applying for a foundation grant, either a small project using district grants or a more ambitious global grant project. Today's program includes a brief introduction to the Rotary Foundation, information on club qualification, accountability, and record keeping, a brief overview of global grants, and detailed information on how to apply for and manage a district grant. The Rotary Foundation is the heart of Rotary's efforts to improve the lives of people around the world. The funds our district make available to clubs for their grant projects comes from the annual fund of the Rotary Foundation. When district Rotarians donate to the annual fund, the foundation invests those funds for 3 years. After the 3 years, 50% of the money stays with the foundation in the World Fund, and the other 50% is available as district designated funds, or DDF, for projects chosen by District 5500. The foundation allows the district to earmark a maximum of 50% of that DDF for district grants. In our district, we allocate the full 50% for projects developed by our clubs. Now I will turn the program over to our stewardship chair, Gary Friedman.
Hello, fellow Rotarians. My name is Gary Friedman, and I am a proud member of the Valle Verde Rotary Club in Green Valley, and I also serve as the stewardship chair for the District 5500 Rotary Foundation Committee. Today, my objective is to help you understand the club qualification requirements that apply to managing district and global grants, and to also help you understand the importance of detailed record keeping. As your stewardship chair for the district, I have two basic jobs that I need to do each year. First, when we are getting ready to submit grants, I have to determine and track which clubs have met the qualifications for participating in a grant. And second, I oversee an assessment team that reviews the grants to make sure you have met and documented everything necessary. Our district requires that you qualify annually. So if you were qualified last year, you have to get requalified this year. And what this does, it helps the clubs keep current on the requirements, and they do change. And it helps clubs understand the current financial and project reporting requirements. In order for your club to qualify to receive a grant this year, you have to have 2 club members attend a seminar, just as you are now doing. Your club president and president-elect must sign a memorandum of understanding, also known as an MOU, and your club must be current in both our district and Rotary International dues. And don't forget, your president-elect must have attended pets. The Memorandum of Understanding is a 2.5-page document, and it covers the items on this slide. I would recommend studying it. It will give you a great understanding of what you must do in each of the areas listed. One of the items covered is number 3 in the MOU, which is the Financial Management Plan. It just says how you have to have a written plan on how you manage the money and who can approve and make expenditures. It talks about the bank account requirements. Please remember the bank account requirements are different for district grants compared to global grants. For district grants, you can use your existing bank account. Just keep a separate accounting of your grant activities. For global grants, you need a separate bank account dedicated to that grant. It also talks about keeping separate records for your grant money. Accountability is extremely important. You must establish who can authorize expenses, and you must make sure your bank records agree with your grant records. And if you purchase equipment, you must establish an inventory of that equipment and any other assets purchased with grant money. In Section 6 of the MOU, it states that you must keep records for 5 years. Please remember, my assessment team has the right to go back and look at these records at any time. Things that you must keep are the MOU, your project needs assessment and budget, and any other documents such as letters of agreements, vendor quotes and receipts, bank statements, and record of funds transferred if you are doing a global grant. In our district, there are some wonderful projects out there, and I am available anytime to help you get qualified for a grant. Please reach out, and don't forget to go to the District 5500 website where you can get all this information to qualify that was discussed in this PowerPoint. So here's wishing you a very successful year.
Welcome to the Global Grants portion of this year's Grant Management Seminar. The one question that comes up constantly from clubs concerning global grants is, how do we begin? During the next several minutes, I hope to answer that question and provide you with a realistic assessment of what it will take on your part in terms of both time and preparation to successfully get a global grant application approved and funded. Unlike district grants, where much of the oversight is managed by your local Rotary district, global grants are a different ballgame. This is mostly good news for us. First, the Rotary Foundation's written guidance for global grants is both extensive and quite clear, and additionally, they have a dedicated staff to help us work through the many challenges we will face when putting together a global grant. However, you must remember that not every Rotary project is eligible for global grant funding. In the broadest sense, the project selected must be related to Rotary's mission of advancing world understanding, goodwill, and peace, and also include active participation of Rotarians. It must conform with Rotary's terms and conditions for district and global grants. It must support activities that align with at least one of Rotary's areas of focus goals. It must have a projected budget of at least $30,000. It must also be a benefit to the community based on the needs identified by that community. And finally, the project must be sustainable after the funds are spent. In addition to selecting the right project, there are several things that you and your club must also accomplish before you are eligible to tackle a global grant. First off, your club must be qualified. This is an annual Rotary requirement and one that cannot be waived by our local district. The specifics of club qualification are discussed elsewhere in this seminar, so I am not going to cover them here. Just remember that it must be accomplished before you submit a global grant application to the Rotary Foundation. You must also actively engage the benefiting community. You must partner with a Rotary club in the country where the project is to take place. You must build a comprehensive financial plan that includes a detailed budget, and, most important for humanitarian projects, which most of ours will be, you must complete a community assessment. Stated another way, this simply means that you must convince Rotary that your great idea for a project is not only yours, but is also the benefiting communities. It is something that they, the community, want and that they are willing to work with you to achieve. Okay, so you are aware of all of this. What you really want to know, what is it going to take to get your application written and approved? To that end, even before you settle on what your global grant project is to accomplish, you need to do a bit of homework. Start by going to the Rotary and District 5500 websites and download all of the listed documents. They are easily downloaded and are essential for your understanding of Rotary's grant process and restrictions when applying for a global grant. Honestly, you won't know the right questions to ask until you have armed yourself with the information provided here. At this point, it might also be a good time to contact the District 5500 Global Grant Subcommittee Chair and get an initial reaction on behalf of our district. Remember, we cannot offer much useful assistance if we don't know about or understand what you are trying to accomplish. The bottom line is that the Rotary Foundation will expect you to understand and comply with all of these documents. So it is essential that you take time at the start and learn what is required before you do anything else. To have a successful global grant, it really takes only two things: time and commitment. Unfortunately, many first-time global grant participants grossly underestimate the time and effort needed to successfully plan and execute a global grant. Don't be misled. Writing a good grant application and gaining Rotary Foundation approval are the short straws in the stack. Also remember that grant writing is an ongoing effort that does not end with the first good draft. There will be recommendations, many recommendations from your local reviewers, your partner club, and the Rotary Foundation staff. This should be expected and not a source of discouragement. Be open to their input. You don't have to accept it all, but it will likely help you to clarify vague references and understand where an alternative view or approach might be helpful. As for time, virtually every successful global grant I have reviewed over the past 9 years needed more time than initially anticipated to both gain approval and to complete. Putting together a global grant project within one Rotary year is by far the exception and not the rule. Project planning simply takes longer than that. When projects do move quickly, the answer is always the same. The project sponsors kept the scope narrow and had prior experience with global grants. The bottom line is that you and your club must realize that you are committing to a project for the long haul. Global grants are not something that you do or start one year and move on to something else the next. The primary project contact for the club should plan to be in place for several years, and the membership of the sponsoring international and host committees should also view their positions in the same manner. That's it. There is no real mystery to having a successful global grant. It only takes time and commitment on the part of your club to the project. Good luck, do good, and feel free to contact me at the listed email address with any questions you may have concerning global grants.
Hello, everybody. I'm Joe Pewitt. I'm the District 5500 District Grants Subcommittee Chair. And in this portion of the Grant Management Seminar, we're going to learn how to apply for a district grant and what records you need to maintain so that they can be audited in future years. At the completion of the Grant Management Seminar, you need to report your completion to your club president that you've viewed the Grant Management Seminar in its entirety. So what exactly is a district grant? A district grant is a grant in which the district matches club funds between $1,000 and $6,000. So you could do a $12,000 project getting half of that money from the district. Projects themselves should be new, small-scale, short-term projects, and your club must be fully qualified in order to participate. A district grant is ideally focused around one of Rotary's areas of focus. For information, Rotary approved a new area of focus called supporting the environment this last year. Sustainability in your project is preferred. Sustainability is both the impact that the project provides in years to come, as well as that there's no follow-on funding required in order for that project to continue to provide benefit. Also, district grant projects must have active personal club and Rotarian participation from Rotarians within District 5500. These next two slides show you examples of some of the current district grant projects that are currently taking place in the Rotary year 2020-2021. So far this year, there's been 21 district grant projects for a total of $67,000. At the time that we're making this grant management seminar, there's actually 2 projects that are still in the review process and haven't yet been finally approved. This slide shows you the second half of the district grant projects that are being currently undertaken. By way of information, our district focuses quite frequently on education and literacy, by far in terms of the projects. But that shouldn't necessarily limit you. Any of the 7 areas of focus can be tackled by a district grant. So where does district grant money come from? District grant funds come back to us from funds that were contributed to the annual fund 3 years ago. So back in 2018-2019, our particular district gave a total of $268,000. Half of that comes back as district designated funds, and half of that or $67,000 then becomes available for district grants. So that'll be what's available this upcoming Rotary year. A district grant project can be local or international, but it must be Rotarian planned and executed, and clubs have to match whatever funds they're requesting from the district in their own with cash from their own club. Clubs are limited to having a single district grant open at a time. However, you can, if there's money left over later in the Rotary year, request additional funds beyond the initial $6,000. A district grant cannot be used to fund vocational training teams, microcredit, or scholarships, and preference of projects is those that can be completed within the current Rotary year and have hands-on club participation. If you are doing a district grant project in another country, you have to have a international local Rotary club partner with your particular project. Project planning is always important, but it's nice to know that district grants don't need to be planned to the same level of detail as a global grant. However, you should, even in a district grant, start out with some level of need survey, trying to identify what's the goal that you're trying to accomplish within the community in which you want to undertake your project. It also helps when you align your project with one of Rotary's areas of focus. Consider partnering with some of the external agencies such as your local school district, your city parks and rec, or other Rotary clubs. When you partner, it often eases the project execution. When you've done your project planning, it's time to begin the application process. Applications for district grants should be submitted between the 1st of June and the 15th of July. That 15th July date is very important because it gives your application the best chance of being fully approved. If you can't make the 15 July date, you can put in a letter requesting funds, a request for funds letter, and that basically says, hey, we're looking at trying to finalize our application not later than the 31st of August. Unfortunately, that request for funds is not established at the same priority as other applications received by 15 July and will only be funded, in fact, if there's money available to do that. But you do have that additional time if you need it and if there's funds available. Applications received after the 31st of August are only considered on a case-by-case basis, only funded at $2,000 in matching district grant funds, and only if those funds are available. For instance, 2 years ago, we had no additional money, and so no additional requests were considered after the initial application phase. Last year, on the other hand, we did have money available, and several district grant projects were funded at $2,000 after the 31st of August. So how do you apply for a district grant? First, you just need to go to the D5500 district grant website and download the district grant application template. That template is a Microsoft Word document, and all you need to do is fill out all the required information that's there on the form. There are instructions at the beginning that clarify any areas that you might have a question about, and you're also free to contact me ahead of time to get help associated with your application. In the end, you should submit that signed copy of the application with any required supporting documentation such as cooperating organization agreements, quotations of some of your purchases, etc. Submit that to me at the email address shown here on the slide not later than the 15th of July. This slide highlights some of the key areas of the application, and the items that are in bold identify those areas where folks have problems at times. So some of the key areas: the project description. What's the project about? What's all involved? Who all is going to be participating on it? Start and stop dates. These are critical. First of all, you're not going to get your money until typically about the 15th or so of August, and your project has to be done not later than 1 May of the next calendar year. So 15 August, 1 May, your start and stop dates should fall somewhere within that time frame. You can't start your project before you have money, and you can't end your project after the 1 May time frame unless you talk to me about it ahead of time. Sustainability, another key area of the application. Exactly what is the benefit, long-term benefit associated with your project, and is it going to require any follow-on money? And if so, where is that follow-on money coming from? Because it can't be coming from additional district grant money beyond this Rotary year. How much Rotarian participation is going to be involved in your project? The more participation, the better. Who are your key points of contact? These are the folks that I'll be reaching out to associated with providing you, your club, your check for your district grant funding, as well as anytime I have questions about where you are on the status of your particular project. The cooperating organization letter, memo, email. If you're partnering with another organization, let's say it's a school district, then you ought to have a letter in there saying that the school district understands what it is you're doing, that they fully approve of you doing that, and further, that if there is additional cost in later years beyond your project year, that cooperating organization will take care of those costs. In other words, the cost should not be coming back on the district after you've undertaken your project. Also, within the application, you're required to list out items to buy. It's called your spending plan. And with that should be quotes for the particular things that you intend to purchase. Oftentimes we'll get a list of, hey, we're going to buy books with no identification associated with it. What kind of books, how much they cost, how many of them are there, is the amount of money that you're requesting reasonable associated with the number of books and types of books that you intend to purchase. You should also have a financing plan. In other words, where is your money coming from? Part of that money will be the district grant money that you're requesting, but the other part of that money should be cash from your club. The district will only match dollar for dollar up to $6,000, cash being put forward by your club or other funding sources that you might have. And finally, the application requires signatures, and again, those signatures can be, you can either take a picture of them and email that to me, or scan in the signature page and email me that scanned in signature page. But these bold areas here are areas that folks oftentimes have issues with in coming up with a completed application. Okay, you submitted your application. What happens next? The first thing I do is take the application, ensure that it's complete, and that all the various areas of the application have the information required. I also ensure that it meets district policy in the sense that it's not asking for money, for instance, to fund a scholarship, which is prohibited by district policy. Next, we take all the district grants and we put them together, and we form a small subcommittee of senior Rotarians that evaluate the district grants and score them. We score them against these various areas listed here in the middle of this slide. How much did your particular club contribute to the annual fund 3 years ago? Clubs that contributed more score higher. Clubs that contributed less score lower. How sustainable is the project? What kind of impact does the project make in years to come? How well does the project align with Rotary's areas of focus. Again, recall that there's a new area of focus that's been added, support to the environment. How well does the project align with district governor's goals and areas of emphasis? Each year, the district governor typically provides their goals for their particular Rotary year to the club presidents. And so if a particular project aligns with those district governor's goals, the score for that particular application is bumped up. How much Rotarian participation is there in the project? This is a real important area, and if your particular project involves several different club project days in which you get the whole club out doing hands-on work on the project, those applications are scored very high. If there's very little Rotarian participation, those are scored lower in this area. What confidence is there that the particular project can be completed in the Rotary year? And then what record does your particular club have in completing district grant projects in the past? Based on these particular scores, the applications are ranked. And then if there's sufficient district grant money available, then we fund all of those particular projects regardless of their ranking. However, as it has happened in previous years where we don't have enough money to fund all the projects, we put them in bands. And the top third of the projects are funded, say, at 90%. The middle third is funded at about 70%, and the bottom third is funded at 50% of what the particular grant asked for. So it is important to consider these areas of criteria when you're completing your application. The particular projects themselves are put together in what's called a spin plan, and that spin plan goes to the District Rotary Foundation Committee Chair and the District Governor for review, and they approve that proposed spin plan of district grants for the upcoming Rotary year. The Rotary Foundation typically receives our proposed spending plan towards the end of July, and takes a week or so to approve it, although they have actually up to 6 weeks to potentially approve that particular spending plan. We get notified, again, typically about the beginning of August 10th or so, that our spending plan has been approved and that we can go ahead and start writing district grant checks to various clubs. And that's the process. That's the way in which district grant applications get formulated, approved, and then funded. I would like everyone to remember, though, that you can always reach out to me in working through your application ahead of time. I'm always available via email or telephone, and be happy to work with you to make sure that you're putting in a district grant request that makes sense and will be successful. So you've received your check and you're now executing your project. I'd like you to keep in mind that it's very important to keep some essential records. And those records actually have to be kept for 5 years and are subject to audit both internally by our stewardship committee as well as externally by the Rotary Foundation. You ought to hang on to your club memorandum. In other words, that agreement that you understand what's involved associated with the district grant. You ought to keep your information associated with how you came up with the need that you're trying to fulfill and the budget that you're executing on behalf of that particular project. You ought to have your cooperating memorandums with organizations that you're teaming with, as well as the quotations of the various things that you're purchasing. You need to keep receipts and bank statements, as well as any records of transferring funds to other organizations associated with your project. Still on the area of record keeping, I want to emphasize receipts. You need to have receipts for any purchase you make that is $50 or more. And the total of those receipts needs to equal your overall total project cost. So for instance, if you had a $6,000 matching grant, your club put up $6,000, so you had a $12,000 project, your final report should contain $12,000 in receipts. If it doesn't include that amount of receipts, then you might be required to return some of your district grant matching funds. Also, those receipts need to be dated after the date that you receive your check. Rotary policy prevents you spending any money on a project prior to you receiving your grant money. The thinking there is that if you had money to spend ahead of receiving your grant money, you really didn't need the grant money to begin with and should have just done the project on your own. So I can't emphasize enough, do not spend any money until you receive your district grant check. In addition, you should maintain copies of any correspondence with things like cooperating organizations or other Rotary clubs that you're participating with, as well as photos. Photos are always a good item for public relations. And as I had mentioned earlier, you need to retain all those records for a minimum of 5 years after the project is complete. So your district grant final report needs to come to me, just like your application did. And again, email is the easiest way to get it to me. It needs to be done either by May 1st or within 60 days of your project completion. If for some reason you can't get the project done by 1 May, then please correspond with me and discuss it with me. And what I'll require at that particular point is that you do a progress report in the same format as your final report that identifies when your project will actually be finished. As the last slide in this module on district grants, I'd like to go over just a couple of errors that we've seen in the application process and the correct procedures. First, don't spend any money until after you get your district grant check. It's critical. Policy prohibits spending any money before you receive your money. The second thing is to ensure that you keep receipts. Keep all receipts for expenses over $50 and keep those for 5 years and ensure that you submit them with your final report. And the final error that we see frequently are incomplete applications. Applications that don't include quotes for all your planned expenditures, applications that don't include a cooperating organization letter if that's applicable, or an application that isn't signed. So please make sure the completeness of your application. Well, that's it, folks. Congratulations. You're now a graduate of the Rotary Year 2021-2022 Grant Management Seminar. And it's important that you report your completion of this grant management seminar to your club president or club president-elect, because they'll be required to certify that at least 2 members of your club have completed the grant management seminar when they submit a district grant application. I want to remind you that there's plenty more information available on our district website. And again, to get there, you just simply have to Google D5500 Club Qualification or D5500 District Grants or D5500 Global Grants, and it'll take you, Google will take you right to our district web pages associated with that information. Also, you can reach out to any of us, the Stewardship Chair, the Global Grants Chair, or me, the District Grants Chair, for information regarding any of this. And you can even download these slides from those same websites. I want to wish all of you success as you undertake district grants or global grants here in this next Rotary year. Thanks.